Welcome, dear students, in this new academic year 2020-21. How are you all? Hope you all are fine and staying home and safe. Let us begin with the History Chapter 2, Europe and India. India was a British colony. The British left behind them in India a strong imprint of their philosophy and culture. Later, Europeans arrived in India because of commercial reasons. In this lesson, we are going to study the events happened during the modern period. So let's start our first topic, that is period of Renaissance. Renaissance means a revival or rebirth of something. The Renaissance was a period in European history marking the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity, covering the 13th to 16th centuries. It is also known as Age of Renaissance. It was associated with social change. Along with the social change, there were many reforms took place in different fields also. The culture and style of art and architecture developed during the Renaissance. Let's see one example of art. Leonardo da Vinci. You must have heard about him many times. He was well versed in different branches of science and art, but he became world renowned as a painter. Mona Lisa and The Last Supper are the examples of his world famous paintings. The next topic is religious reform movement. The Reformation leads to religious reform. As people read Luther's theses, they began to agree with him. A movement began called the Reformation that led to religious reform throughout Europe. Due to this movement, human freedom and rationalism gained more importance. Now let's talk about geographical discoveries. In European history, in which extensive overseas exploration emerged as a powerful factor in European culture and which was the beginning of globalization. Let us know about few European sailors who went on expedition to discover sea route to India. In 1487 AD, Bartholomew Dias began his expedition in search of India, but reached the tip of African continent, which we now know as the Cape of Good Hope. In 1492 AD, Christopher Columbus set on his journey to India by sailing towards west, but reached on the eastern coast of the continent of America. In 1498 AD, Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama managed to sail past the Cape of Good Hope and reached the Indian coast in Calicut. Let's move on to intellectual revolution in Europe. It is also known as the Age of Enlightenment. It dominated the world of ideas in Europe during the 17th to 19th centuries. This revolution included a range of ideas centered on sovereignty of reason, evidence of the senses, liberty, progress, toleration, etc. Next is revolution in political sphere. It gave rise to development of parliamentary democracy in England, change in the form of cabinet system, the Bill of Rights 1689 laid limitations on the power of the king. The sovereignty of Parliament was established. Now, let us talk about American War of Independence. Let us watch one video about it.
When you enter the rotunda, you'll be greeted to a statue and memorial honoring the American Revolutionary War, which was fought from 1775 to 1783. Also known as the American War of Independence, the Revolutionary War began with a confrontation between British troops and local militia at Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts on April 19, 1775. The conflict arose from the growing tensions between residents of Great Britain's 13 North American colonies and the colonial government, which represented the British Crown. Throughout the war, state troops and local militias supplemented the Continental or the Federal Army. The total number of men who served is not known. Men between the ages of 16 and 60 may have served during the war in either the Continental Army, state line troops, or local militia mustered to help the Continental troops. In 1775, when the American Revolution began, there was no regular army. Instead, each colony defended itself with a militia made up of local men. With few exceptions, any male 16 or older was expected to participate in the militia. By 1776, Washington had an army of 20,000 men. About one-third came from colonial militia groups, and two-thirds were regular army. France entered the American Revolution on the side of the colonists in 1778, turning what had essentially been a civil war into an international conflict. After French assistance helped the Continental Army force the British surrender at Yorktown, Virginia in 1781, the Americans had effectively won their independence, though fighting would not formally end until 1783.
I hope the video must have helped you to understand the topic. After the independence, a new nation as the United States of America, with a federal government, written constitution and based on the principles of democracy, was born. Now let's go to the next topic, that is French Revolution. Let us see the causes of French Revolution. It is divided into 4 parts. You can read along with me. Inequalities among classes, Enlightenment ideas, that is natural rights and equality, American Revolution, soaring national debt, that is deficit spending, Louis XVI failed economic reform, Estates General, soaring food prices, bad harvest, hunger and poverty, bread riots, formation of the National Assembly, tennis court oath, storming the Bastille. French Revolution gave to the world the 3 values of liberty, equality and fraternity. Next is Industrial Revolution. In the later period of 18th century, there were many technological innovations in Europe. Textiles were the dominant industry of the Industrial Revolution in terms of employment. The economic level of the country also increased. This revolution began in England and then spread towards West. During this period, England enjoyed industrial prosperity and came to be described as world factory. For today, we will stop here. Let us move on to the exercise from your textbook. Question number 4, that is, complete the following table. You can answer those questions. The another question is question number 2. The third one, Age of Renaissance. You can answer in your own words also. Read the lesson thoroughly. The remaining lesson we will complete in the next session. Thank you, students.